Hey, this is Jerry Maynard. Why are we in the position we are in because of the politics of Donald Trump? Are we to blame because we didn't come out to vote? Are white folks to blame because of the wickedness and the racism that's going on? Or maybe it's a combination of both. You know, somebody like me who's my age, we blame young people for all kind of stuff that's not their fault. We say, well, young people, why didn't you come out to vote? Well, maybe there's a reason why they didn't come out to vote. Maybe there's a reason because they're informed. Maybe it's because they're apathetic. We need to stop talking to ourselves as older folks, and we need to start asking the question of those who are part of the generation who make our country what it is. As a leader in this community, I sometimes want to make assumptions without asking the right questions. That's why we have Brandon Woodruff, who's here with me, who's from Chattanooga, Tennessee, and he and I are going to have a discussion about why America is in the condition it's in and whether his generation can make the change, the transformation, and bring us victories back to the level it used to be before this administration took office. Brandon, Jerry Maynard, how are you doing, man?
How you doing today, brother?
Good to see you.
How you doing?
It's a pleasure to meet you.
Definitely a pleasure to meet you as well.
Amen. Shout out to Pac.
Yep. Yeah, that's my best friend. Been my best friend since we were, in college, so I love her to death.
So Tiffany is the producer of the show. She's someone that's taken our media ministry to next levels at our church. But this isn't quote a church podcast. This is something for you and I to delve into and to talk about. So let's talk about politics real quick. So you know me and I know you. You have a undergraduate in political science.
Correct, from Middle Tennessee State.
And you also have a master's?
In public policy from Lipscomb University in Nashville.
So you are very, very expert in these matters.
Yes, I like to consider myself. So I paid a lot of money to have the information and knowledge that I have, correct.
But you're also more than just a political scientist. You're something as an entrepreneur in fashion.
Activist.
Come on, talk about it.
Yeah, I do a host of things.
Right.
From being politically and civically engaged to owning a few of my own businesses. I help people with their financial futures. I help people with credit coaching and business funding. I do things in the entertainment and nightlife. So I do an array of things, man.
Right.
But ultimately, all these things I'm able to do through Christ, right? Who allows me to have this platform and access to being able to, just being able to be in these different spaces where sometimes non-believers dwell. Right. But still being able to be myself and be that light in some of those dark places for some of these people. So I'm blessed, man.
Awesome.
Blessed.
So I want to talk to you today because what we want to delve into is the political climate that's happening in America, and especially for African Americans. And when we're dealing with African Americans, why is it that we allow this man to get into the White House and have all of the things that are happening now today regarding DEI, regarding HBCUs, regarding the elimination of Black history and what this country really is? There's a reason why I asked Brandon to be with us, because oftentimes I'm very guilty of saying this and that about generation that and generation this. If we don't have the conversation, I'm wrong for that. And I think many of my colleagues of my age are wrong because we make assumptions as to why generations below us, or not below us, behind us rather, make the decisions that they made. So let me give a 1 minute breakdown. In 2020, Joe Biden, along with Kamala Harris, was able to bring back the Obama coalition, the Clinton coalition, and that is women, minorities, and young people, along with labor, came out in record numbers to vote and defeat Donald Trump in 2020. However, in 2024, we saw that more African American men voted for Donald Trump since George W. Bush. Again, more African American men voted for Donald Trump as when they voted for George W. Bush. I'll say this: Muslims voted for Donald Trump in record numbers. Women, white women, voted for Donald Trump in record numbers. 53% of white women voted for Donald Trump. Hispanics voted for Donald Trump. And the question is, why? I don't know. And I know that, Brandon, you don't speak for every Black man. I know you don't speak for all African Americans. But let's talk about politics. Many people of my generation think it's apathy. But I was hearing you say earlier when we were having a conversation, you may have a different opinion.
So something that I've noticed, especially amongst the young generation, because for example, in 2018, I ran for office myself. When I was 25, I was the youngest person to ever run for state house representative in my hometown of Chattanooga. And so at that time, I had a record-breaking number of, newly registered voters under the age of 25. I also had a record-breaking number of African Americans or young people under the age of 25 coming out to actually vote as well. And one of the questions that I was always asked was, how did you do it? Like, what did you do to really energize and galvanize the young people to come out and vote in record number? And I tell people all the time, it's really just about giving people information, right? I use a very Socratic, Socrates-like approach. And for the people out there who doesn't know what that means, Socrates was great for putting an idea on people's mind and allowing them to answer their own question just by getting and feeding them certain information to make their minds think about whatever they thought about a different way.
Right.
And I think that's exactly what Donald Trump and his administration has been able to do. They've been able to present information in a way that has allowed my generation to think about the information that they've relayed to us, or the administration is relaying to us, and really dissect it and analyze it from a high level, including the fact that it's 2025, right? We have so many different outlets and accessibilities to get information, from ChatGPT to Google to social media. Like, all these different hubs of information are on a day-to-day basis, hour to hour, second to second. Like, you can get on social media at any time of the day.
Right.
I don't care if it's
Right.
5 a.m. or 5 p.m. and get some information about whatever is going on in the world real time.
What about the disinformation? Because a lot of the stuff that comes out to you, not only myself and to you, it to me goes to every generation. A lot of it's disinformation. It's false.
So let me better understand the question. So you're asking me?
Yeah, we have access, and you were saying to me that Donald Trump is doing a great job as far as providing information, allowing people then to absorb it themselves, digest it, and then apply themselves and think for themselves. But a lot of times it's tainted because it's misinformation.
Right, and I think that's, and I'm a fair guy, right? I think that happens on both sides.
Okay.
I think disinformation is a tactic that is utilized in general as propaganda for the mind or a demographic of minds to move or think in a certain way, right? But in special regards to Donald Trump, or even, I don't even want to say Donald Trump, let's just say in 2025, right?
Okay.
Like, I really don't believe in disinformation. And the reason I don't believe in disinformation is because the truth, or the access to the truth, is there.
Okay.
Now, if you decide to just take that information for what it is and go with it, I call that a fool. On either side, right? Whether it's good information from the initial start, because you don't know if something is disinformation until you do what? Research it.
Well, how many people have the time to do that? And that, let's say with Russia,
we all have time.
In 2020 and in 2024, Russia and China both engage in propaganda and providing disinformation, I'll call it lies, to the American voters in order to persuade them to vote one way or the other. And so disinformation are sometimes just flat out lies. For example, saying that there were people eating dogs and eating their dogs in a certain city in order to make immigrants look horrible. That was false information by J.D. Vance, false information by Donald Trump. It was to poison American voters against a woman of color whose mother was an immigrant, whose father was an immigrant. And so when you get disinformation, sometimes that will then literally taint and poison the well of information that people then say, oh, it must be true because I read it.
So let me ask you this.
Yes, sir.
Did not the same thing happen in 2008?
With who?
Barack Obama.
How did he have disinformation?
Oh, they were saying, like all the stuff they were saying about him? Like, he's not an American citizen.
Oh, yeah, it was all disinformation.
He's not, right.
Yeah.
But what ended up happening?
Well, he won because of the coalition that he put together, and he was able to win. We had record numbers of African Americans voted. I had record numbers of young people voted. We had record numbers of minority people voted. And like you said, I love what you did in Chattanooga. He had record numbers of first-time registered voters. We had people who were testifying, I'm 80 years old. I've never voted before.
But I'm voting for him.
But I'm voting for him.
Right. And I think it goes back to my earlier point of whether you are presented with information or disinformation, it's going to make the person, the average voter dig deeper into the candidate that the information is being presented about. And so what happens is like with Kamala, right? Like the disinformation that got presented on her, even if the information that got presented on her as misinformation, right, was classified as false.
Right.
Because they just opened up a can of worms.
Yeah.
Because, okay, this is false, but this is true. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
Something that I would have never even looked into at first
Right.
you would have never gave me this misinformation.
Right.
And I think with the example that I was giving with Obama is it helped his case. The misinformation helped his case because we don't know who is this senator kid from Chicago? We don't know him.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But now when we start talking about he's Muslim, he's not American.
He wasn't born in America. Yeah.
Okay, so now we start cracking the code. But then when you crack the code on all these things that are false or whatever, you then begin to peel back the layers of the stuff that Obama has been working on for decades.
Yeah.
That would have went overlooked. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No.
That would have went overlooked.
Yeah.
If nobody would have ever presented them this information for them to look into who Barack Obama really is.
See, you have greater faith in the American people than I do. Because I don't think the American people will peel back the layers of the onion. I think that a lot of American people, especially in the rural communities and counties, will simply take that which is offered to them and they will like eat it, digest it, and say it has to be real. I don't have that type of faith, and especially in the rural community, that they will literally take misinformation and say, let me go research for myself and see whether this is true or not. I think they literally, when they see it on television, on Fox News, they believe it.
And when you say rural communities, like, let me just be blunt, like white country people, like in the middle of nowhere, is that what you're saying when you say rural?
You said that.
Well, give me your classification of rural, because, and the reason that I'm asking
okay, I'll give you rural. So when you go and you look at Illinois, right? Illinois has 3 major cities. Chicago, of course, is the biggest one, and all the suburbs around it. But then all those other counties are rural counties, and then you got Peoria in the middle, and then you got Peoria, and you got Champaign-Urbana, right? So in Illinois, you got like 3 or 4 cities that have large population. The rest of it is
the same way.
Rural. Well, yeah, okay, sure. But,
you mean you got Knoxville?
Yeah, but we got 7. We have 7 cities, in my opinion. So.
Where in
Tennessee?
That what?
I got Memphis, Jackson, Clarksville, Murfreesboro, Chattanooga, Knoxville, Nashville.
No. Like those other places, like Murfreesboro's rural, Jackson's rural.
You think it's rural?
Yes. Yes. Like if you have to migrate somewhere else for the greater commodities that you need, that's rural.
Okay.
Jackson goes to Memphis.
Okay.
Murfreesboro goes to Nashville. Like all those cities lack something that they have to migrate to another city. Like that city doesn't host it.
Okay.
Chattanooga, Nashville, Knoxville, Memphis. I think those are the 4 major cities. Okay. But that's neither here nor there.
Right.
The point that I'm making is that to your point about rural versus urban, right? I think because when I think about urban versus rural in the light in which we're talking, I think there's way more similarities than there are differences. And I think it's overlooked because of the political climate and because of how the political climate tries to divide the two lifestyles. If you talk about somebody that grew up in an urban city, an urban neighborhood, which AKA the hood, versus somebody that grew up in rural or AKA the middle of nowhere country, I think that they experience similar things from a lack of educational resources, from a lack of family and health resources. I mean, it's a lot of similarities. So I guess the question that I'm asking you to get a better understanding of what the question is like, what are we really considering rural versus urban when we talk about mindset? Because I think that's what you're talking about, because you're talking about mindset, right? You don't think that these group of people have the mindset it would take to actually go and peel back the layers.
Right. So I would be very real clear. Anybody who's under 30, unless you grew up under a rock, you would know how America has changed and how African Americans are not seen the way they used to be seen back in the 20s, 30s, and 40s. Okay. One of the reasons is because the exposure to multiple societies and multiple communities and cultures. If you're in an urban center, you are exposed to so many different ways of life. You're exposed to different religions. You're exposed to different races, different colors. if you grow up in a rural area where it's 99% your people,
you're going to school,
church, everything, business, restaurants, you never leave.
Like you don't see nobody different until you go play a sport.
It's right.
Until you go to
or
college.
watch TV.
Yeah, watch TV. Yeah.
And so then you have the same proclivity than you had back in the 50s to believe that the people who don't look like you are way different from you. And then you can then be susceptible to news media and narratives that classify us as, black people commit 50% of the crimes, although we only represent 13% of the population. Right. So I don't see them then peeling back the layers, because there are studies that show that in the rural areas, they're more susceptible to believe the misinformation and not go and say, how do I make sure that what I've heard is true? I think in the urban area, you're forced to deal with it because you have to look at somebody who has a hijab on, or I may not have said it right, but you can get misinformation about Muslims, but then you got to run into a Muslim.
Right.
And you can't just hide underneath the rock
right.
of ignorance. And that's what I think is the difference.
So I definitely agree with the classifications of the areas, right? And the things that go on in those areas. However, where I guess I have to push back is that I know people, or large demographics of people who operate the same in urban settings and rural settings, right? From a mindset standpoint of being easily influenced by whatever, right? Misinformation, lack thereof, right? So, once again, I don't think it's necessarily a location. I don't think it's because once again, the internet is everywhere.
Yeah.
It doesn't that's the difference of my generation and your generation, right? Your generation is I'm going to church, school, there's no internet, so I'm only seeing the people that I'm seeing on a day-to-day basis.
Right. But we got our information from the encyclopedia.
But now, I can Google it.
Yeah.
You're right. I can Google it. Not only can I Google it, I can get on YouTube and I can see these people interacting with people that look like me somewhere else. So if I've been told that these people, say for instance, if I've been told that a certain demographic or subgroup of people don't like people that look like me,
right?
White people, right? That's not right. They don't like white people, right? And I live in this very secluded part of the state, right?
Yeah.
I can easily get on the internet and find the opposite of that.
Right.
Versus, in your generation in the 70s and 80s, that might not have been the case.
Agree.
Right?
Oh yeah.
Like you had to really go by what you were told.
So if we have all this access to information, then why do young people, and I know you don't speak for all of them, but why did we find ourselves in this position that young people are not voting as in the same numbers as before? If you look at Davidson County, African American voter turnout is lower today than it was 20 years ago. Yeah, even though we have access to all this information, you were able to get people to come out and vote for you. You were able to get young people who had never voted before to come and vote. Yet today, I'm so frustrated because I've been doing this for 30 years, and to see that we went from here to here and now we're down to here. We're back at the same levels we were 20 years ago as far as African Americans, not only participation in voting, but our political, it's like something happened. And I don't know what the disconnect is. And that's why I brought you on to help me, because I don't have the answer.
It's not a disconnect, man. It's we have more information. I just have to be honest. I'm a very transparent person. The heroes of your generation are not our heroes. And I think that's a disconnect, if we want to talk about a disconnect.
Okay.
Right? We know the truth about Martin Luther King, and that's my brother. That's my friend, brother. I love him to death. I love the work that he did, but we now know the truth. Right. We know the truth about Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson. You know what I'm saying?
What do you mean by know the truth? You mean they're human?
Whatever you want to call
human. It. Well, tell me what you mean by you know the truth.
We know that these people, the narratives that have been given to us about these people are not 100% accurate.
Okay.
And the glory stories that our parents praise these individuals or make these individuals their heroes for are not stories that we are really impressed by because of the,
You know, I get what you're saying.
I mean, you know, and this is going to
like,
get you some views. What I'm gonna say
it's like celebrities, right? Celebrities, you didn't know about all their bad stuff.
But forget the celebrities.
What I'm saying is,
these are people who we have considered as hero. Like, if like put it like this: if we are considering ever in our lives Jay-Z or P. Diddy to be your hero, you already was like lost.
Okay.
Right? Like I like just from the conceptuality, because they have done nothing to be a hero, right?
Okay.
Like even their narratives, like what, finding some people and signing them and making them millionaires from music, like that's not, versus somebody over here who's fighting to actually create a different type of lifestyle for these people to even be doing what they're doing, right? That's a different story, right? Like it's so many people that really should be on the front lines of like your generation as heroes when we talk about facts, like the Shirley Chisholms.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like it's certain people who really should be at the forefront, because like I told you, I'm gonna give you some views with this. Like, this is why my generation, like this is where my generation is at with this, right? So Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., right? He was a minister, correct?
Oh yeah, pastor.
He's a pastor, right?
Pastor with his dad.
Right.
That's right.
And he also was known as probably the most notable
civil rights leader in the history of the world, right?
Right. But the truth is like, now when my generation, because of the information and access is out there, right, we know that he cheated on his wife.
Right.
Right. And you say that's human, right?
Right.
Sure. But why, when we talk about what's the disconnect or why my generation isn't in the church?
Okay. Why?
Right? Do you see where I'm going with this?
Yeah, but see, the relationship between God and you has nothing to do with what the pastor does.
You're right. But you have to understand that like somebody who doesn't have somebody who wasn't raised in the church, who doesn't understand any of the things that we're talking about right now, right? You have to lead by example. Like, you can't be a part of this religion or this, faith and not live it to where, and I think that's the whole point of why, like, taking your faith serious is so important, because it's like, we all have a responsibility within our faith to make sure that we're living and being a light at all times, so that we don't discourage or dissuade somebody who may have been looking at you as to the opportunity to you know what I'm saying, to be saved, right? And so I'm saying that from the standpoint of like, that's the same reason my generation finds a heavy disconnect of being in church. Like we hear pastors tell us, right, like it's about the relationship between you and God, and not about the church and the pastor, but it's also pastors that we see doing the things. So like, how can we listen to a pastor of any sort, right, tell us anything when our pushback is going to be your clergyman, like your group, your multitude, like, is doing this. I mean, it's just like bad cop, good cop, right? Like, if a bad cop does something, and a good cop comes by and say, hey, like, not all cops are bad. It's like, how convincing are you going to be? Right. If I've had a bad experience.
But that doesn't give you the excuse to break the law. I mean, so listen, I want to discuss that on part 2. When we get into the church, I want to talk about the church on part 2. You don't want to miss this, but let's conclude though first on what we're talking about, politics. Okay. I asked you, was there a disconnect? And you said, no, it's really about information. Correct. And you said, my heroes, talking about you, don't want to put words in your mouth. Our heroes may not be the same as your heroes. And I want to explore that as we conclude this, right? When I look at a Jesse Jackson and I look at an Al Sharpton, I look at the value that they can bring in this way. When Jesse Jackson was at his climax and Al Sharpton now is at his, is that if there was a man, unarmed black man, shot by a police officer, and the video shows that that the police officer engaged in unlawful conduct, if I, Jerry Maynard, came to that city and said, this is injustice, you wouldn't get any media coverage. You wouldn't have the national media. You wouldn't have all the clicks. You wouldn't have all the views. Al Sharpton comes, what he brings is he brings the ability to bring the world's attention to this injustice. He brings the resources that people will now pay attention, that there is a better chance that that man's family, who was unarmed and shot by the police, will get justice, because Al Sharpton, for whatever reason, God has anointed him and blessed him to be a literally lightning rod that could come into any city and bring attention to that which was injustice. And because of that, I look beyond all of the other things, and I don't say I only see. What I do see is the value and the utility that this man puts his life on the line for bringing justice and attempting to bring justice to those who have been voiceless.
I'm glad you said that.
Yeah.
Because I literally just had this conversation with somebody yesterday. And so my pushback would be, everything you said is true.
Yeah.
But let me ask you, the last time you seen Al Sharpton pull up somewhere and something really changed. Tell me the last time you seen Jesse Jackson speak on behalf of a family that suffered from any of these things and something's changed.
Well, he was able to change for that particular person. Policy may not have changed. Culture may not have changed. Racism may not have changed, but he was able to change that situation there.
Was he?
Yeah.
But what do those things really impact from a greater? So let me just jump to my point. My point that I was making to my friend yesterday is people like individuals like Al Sharpton, Jesse Jackson, once they reached a certain plateau in their career, they no longer became change agents. They became implants.
Okay.
Right? And what is an implant, Brandon? It's somebody that's put into society or culture as somebody to regulate money in ways that, perfect example, you said like, if Al Sharpton comes to an incident that is where there's police brutality, no matter what it is, right? He's going to bring exposure. He's going to bring clicks. But who is he really making money for? Because all the people that own the media outlets, all the people that own the social media outlets, all the people it's not going to change the family's life that he's actually there for, but it's definitely going to change the people's lives who own the companies that you're clicking, that you're watching, that the media outlets.
But what I've seen happen is a person who
white America monetizes off of black trauma.
I agree with that 100%. But also you have a sense of justice when the police have to be investigated. You get a sense of justice when that police officer is fired. You get a sense of justice when that family gets a settlement. You can't bring the life back. But I have seen Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson get people freed from prison. I've seen them be able to get people settlements, attention to the injustice where police officers were literally fired and lost their job. They may have gone across the country, got somewhere else. But literally something has happened specifically for that family, and bringing attention to it is better, because what happens in the dark comes to the light, and you've got to have agents of light. You have to have agents of light. And so that's what I'm saying to you.
So my agent of light would be somebody like Lee Merritt. Do you know who Lee Merritt is? Or Ben Crump?
I know Ben Crump.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
So Lee
He's
Merritt,
my frat brother.
So Lee Merritt is literally Ben Crump's protege. Right, but like those individuals are individuals that I would consider to be like changing.
Okay.
You should definitely look up Lee Merritt. What fraternity you in?
There's only one, Omega Psi Phi.
So Lee Merritt, he's on Omega as well.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
It's, you're right, it is only one fraternity, and it's not Omega Psi Phi. But we'll talk about that later.
Well, listen, we're going to come back with part 2. We want to talk about the church. We want to talk about the role of faith, not religion, but the role of faith in our community. I'm Jerry Maynard. So glad that we have my friend Brandon here. We're going to be talking and really just chopping it up. But we wanted to make sure that we invite you to subscribe. If you're on YouTube, subscribe and like. If you're on Facebook, please like and share. This is Soul Success. My name is Pastor Jerry Maynard of Cathedral of Praise. We invite you to join us every Sunday at 10 o'clock a.m. for worship service, and then join us every Thursday at 7 o'clock p.m. for Soul Success. Tune in for part 2, where we talk about faith in the community.